Alright, so today we're making a freeze gun, which is where you shoot somebody and they get frozen for whatever amount of time. The first thing you're gonna need is a conditional button. So we're gonna drag a conditional button out like that. So in this conditional button, we only need to change one setting, and that's key item 1. This is the item or the weapon that you need to hit someone with in order for them to be frozen. For this example, I'm gonna be using the revolver, the level 5 revolver. So anytime I hit anybody with the level 5 revolver, which is the legendary revolver, and only when I hit them with this, they're gonna be frozen. And now we need to get into the verse stuff. All right, so here we're in the code, and the first thing we need is an editable so we can get a reference to our conditional button. So I'm just gonna make an editable here, and then I'm gonna make another editable. This one isn't necessary, but I'm just gonna make it just for the heck of it. I'm gonna call this one freeze time, and this is the amount of time that somebody is going to be frozen whenever they get shot. All right, so before we get into any coding, it's always beneficial to sort of map out your logic and what we're actually going to be trying to accomplish here. What we're going to be doing is listening to anytime a player gets damaged. So let's say this is my target right here. So in verse, we have this damaged event, so we can listen to anytime some player gets damaged. Now this damage event is going to trigger anytime they either get damaged by a player or literally anything, that being fall damage or maybe an animal or something. So we need to check if the damage was done by a player. So we would run some sort of if statement here. If it wasn't done by a player, then we don't do anything because obviously they weren't shot by a player, so nothing to do there. If they were shot by a player, then we need to do another check, which to me sounds like another if statement. And in here, we want to check what weapon the player who shot, in this case, this person right here, what weapon were they holding when they damaged our player here. So we check if this weapon is the weapon that we have in our conditional button, in this case, our revolver. If it is, then we freeze our player, this guy, our target. So then we freeze that, and then after, let's say 2 seconds or whatever, we unfreeze him. So like we've discussed, the first step is listening to anytime a player gets damaged. So I'm going to create a handler event here, a handler function, sorry. I'm going to call it OnPlayerDamage. And in here, we're going to take a damage result, which is a struct of type damage underscore result. Void equals, and like we said, we need to check if this damage was actually done by a player. So the way we do that is if we look at this damage underscore result struct, you can see that we have our target, which was the person that was damaged, the amount, which is self-explanatory, and then the instigator, which you can see here, this is a game action instigator, because remember, the damage can be done by fall damage or an animal or something else. So this is why this returns a game action instigator. If this game action instigator is a player, then we do the other check that they were holding the weapon. So the first step is checking if this is a player. And the way we do that, remember, that's with an if statement. So I'm going to do if, we're just going to say instigator is equal to the damage result dot instigator question mark. And the reason we put this question mark is because this is an optional, and this option is going to return false if the instigator is not a player. Now, if it is a player, then this is going to return a game action instigator, which we then assign to instigator. From then, we need to get the agent of our instigator. So all we do is do agent is equal to our instigator, and we do get instigator agent. Like that. And if this succeeds, this means that we successfully have retrieved an agent from an instigator, which means that they were indeed a player. So that's step 1. Now step 2, like we said, we need to check if that player is holding this weapon, in this case our revolver, and that's why we need this conditional button here. So the way we do this is by typing in conditional button dot is holding item, and then in here we pass in our agent. Now what this is going to do is this function is going to succeed. Our agent is holding whatever item we put inside this conditional button, which was the revolver. Now if all of this succeeds, then it means that we've successfully completed all the checks here. And now we've done this. Now what proceeds is to actually freeze our target. Now you notice that this target is a damageable, which is not a Fort character. So the first thing we need to do is actually convert this target, which is a damageable, into a Fort character. And all we have to do for that is I'm going to create a new variable called target is going to be equal to our damage result.target, and we need to cast this into a Fort character. So all we do is enclose this in Fort_character, and then just wrap the. If we can successfully convert this damageable into a Fort character, then we assign it to the target. And then all we have to do here is freeze our target. Now, like we said, we want to unfreeze them after 2 seconds. So we need some sort of asynchronous function. I'm going to go in here and create a new function called freeze player. So here, and it's going to take in a target of type Fort_character. And we're going to add the suspense because we want to deal with time here. So firstly, we just have to do target.put in stasis. And in here, I can just pass in an empty stasis_args like this. If you want to be more technical, you can specify if you want to allow them turning, allow falling, or allow emotes. By default, if you just pass it like this, all of that's going to be false, which means they won't be able to turn, they won't be able to fall, and they won't be able to use emotes. And then after this, I'm just going to do sleep for 2.0 seconds. And then we can just do target.release from stasis, which will unfreeze the character. Now to actually start this function in our then clause here, all we have to do is type in spawn and then just pass in our freeze player with our target as the target here. That's pretty much all of our logic. The only thing we need now is to actually subscribe to the player damaged event. So in my onBegin, I'm going to do for player in getPlaySpace.getPlayers. We're going to get the Fort character of every player. And then we simply do Fort character dot damaged event dot subscribe, and we just pass in our OnPlayerDamage event here. So OnPlayerDamage, and I'm just going to change the damage. So we pass in that. So anytime a player gets damaged, we're going to run this check. If all of this succeeds, then we freeze the target. So one last thing I forgot is actually to put this variable freeze time inside here instead of hard coding to 2.0. So just pass in your freeze time like that, and then that's always going to freeze. All right, so once you're done with that, you can just go up here to verse and then build your verse code, and then just go into your creative devices folder. You should see your freeze device or whatever you call it. I'm just going to drag this out, and in here you'll notice we have our conditional button. So just check whatever conditional button you're going to be using, and then of course we have our freeze time here. So I'm just going to leave it at 2 seconds. So I have my second account here, and you're gonna notice that when I shoot them with the revolver, we get frozen the player. I know, grammatically correct, and then unfroze the player. And if I shoot them with the gray revolver, we don't get such message. Same with this. Now I'm gonna jump here, and you can see they're frozen midair, and when they unfreeze, they go back here. You can, I guess, technically just freeze them forever if you have enough ammo, so you can do this. Just spam this and then they'll be frozen forever. So here's my point of view. I'm gonna try and, you can see I'm completely frozen. So before you go and copy all this code, here's a disclaimer. So first of all, if you're making something like a box fight or a zone wars or anything that's round based, really, this should be good enough, because this onBegin is going to run every single round. So we're going to be getting all the players, which is the most updated list of players every round, and we're subscribing everybody appropriately. But if you have something like a free-for-all where you only have one round and players are joining and leaving, if a player joins halfway through the game, they never got this OnPlayerDamage event subscribed to them, meaning that they will not be able to be frozen if they get shot. So what we need to do is we need to handle whenever a player joins and then subscribe them to the Fortnite event again. So all we need to do is just create a function here on player added, which takes in a player of type player, and it's void. And in here we simply do the same thing we did here. So we just do if Fort character is the player dot get Fort character. Then we simply do Fort character dot damaged event dot subscribe on player damage. So same thing we did here. So just simply that, and that should add them to the pool of player damaged event. Right now, one last thing we need to do is in our onBegin here, we need to listen to anytime a player gets added to our game. So for that, we just have to do get play space player added event, and we pass in these parentheses here dot subscribe on player added. So we listen to anytime a player gets added, and when they do, we simply get their Fort character and then subscribe their damaged event to the OnPlayerDamage. That way, if they get damaged, then they're also going to be frozen. Now, one final thing is, because we're using this is holding item, we're checking whenever the player gets damaged. So ideally you want to use weapons that are hit scan, so not snipers which have bullet travel time, because there's a chance that they shoot the weapon and then when the player actually gets damaged, they've changed to a pickaxe or something, and because they're holding a pickaxe, this is gonna fail, so the target is not gonna get frozen. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope this was helpful, and yeah.